Hello chess friends and welcome to Qxd3 Chess channel and welcome to another spectacular game that has been played a couple of days ago on the official and beautiful computer chess rating list website, the popular CCRL. We have here Stockfish 16.1 against another top engine Qxg5 in a crazy Alekhine-Chatard Attack against the French defense. So today we'll see the fish playing one of the sharpest methods against the French defense. So if you're bothered maybe by the French, this could be maybe your home preparation. Maybe you can try it out in some blitz bullet games first of all, and then if it's working for you, maybe try to analyze it deeper. I think it's a really cool opening against the French defense. So let's see now how the strongest chess engine in the world, Stockfish, plays now this aggressive method against the French defense. So with the white pieces, the fish opened with move e4. Qxg's response was e6, the French, d4, d5, knight to c3, Paulson variation, knight to f6, and now we have bishop to g5, the so-called burn variation, bishop to e7, e5, and now after knight to d7, you can of course pick up the bishop, you can of course also retreat, but now we have this Alekhine-Chatard attack move with the move h4, allowing here black to pick up now the pawn on g5. Black gained now an extra pawn, but the queen is a little bit exposed, and now there are several strategic elements that I think is that are useful here for white. First of all, as I said, we get an extra tempo against the queen. We have also the h-file attack, and when we watch now also the bishop's activity, the bishop on d3, for instance, if it comes to d3, then it has a great control on both of these diagonals. On the other hand, black's light square bishop is of course out of game, it's neutralized, it's paralyzed by its own pawn. So I think it's a decent compensation for the lost pawn. You have an h-file attack, you have a better activity, you get extra time, extra tempi against the queen, and as I said, also you get beautiful and better piece activity than black. So nothing lost so far for white, although white lost the pawn. Now we have queen to e7. You could also try queen to h4, then you can try with maybe with the move g3, or also with knight to b5 to be aggressive here. Now black can play something like king to d8, and then again it's very unpleasant to stay with your king in the center of the board where you couldn't castle anymore. So also a popular line here. I see now 4 games in the database, and all of them ended with a drop. But here after knight to h3, the Qxg5 chess engine played now the move queen to e7, and you see now, as I said, we have now the better bishop from white's perspective. We have also the h-file attack. The queen is a little bit misplaced, and as I said, at least something for the lost pawn. Here we have queen to g4. The fish continues to pressure against this weak pawn. f5. Qxg5 connects now the queen to the pawn and also kicks away now the queen. Queen to g3, knight to f8. The issue is here, you cannot play c5. Usually in the French defense you're trying to do this move, but now it's not working because usually you also have the bishop still on f8 that could control maybe the d6 square. Now if you play too early the move in c5, then you get this one, knight to b5, and there's simply no good protection anymore around the square d6. I'm telling you about this move c5. Obviously it's a bad move, but I think in a later stage of the game, black would love to play something like this. Black would love, of course, somehow to liberate himself on this side of the board. Here from move queen to g3, queen to knight to f8 was played, and again knight to f4. Again, I'm pointing out, even if you prepare here something like a6, preventing maybe knight to b5, and then you try c5, I wanted to show you that actually c5 is, even in this line, not working. Although this queen is protecting this pawn, now you get this one, and that's, I think, a common trap in the Alekhine-Chatard attack from white's perspective. Maybe you can trick someone into this line also with the white pieces. After knight to d5, the game is almost lost. Another knight is taking, you step back with the queen, and now, for instance, knight to b6 again wins the piece back. You can also get a rook. Maybe you try queen to a2, then we pick up this one. You can deliver, of course, a couple of checks, but now the queen is coming. Look at this, we simply cover with the rook. We play king to e2, no good checks are possible. We play king to f3, and you're getting destroyed here. Also in some lines, maybe even some checkmate threats on e7 are possible, so it's simply not working. Here after knight to d5, you could maybe try queen to d7. There is simply not a good square for the queen, and again you get here the fork against the bishop, the queen, and also against the rook. So again, I would say game over here for black. So dirty stuff. Again, a6 c5, you see, is never working because of this tactics around the square d5 and also around the square e6. So that's why here after knight to f8 and knight to f4 here by Stockfish, Qxg5 continues now now with the theoretical novelty with the move c6. Keeps, of course, the healthy structure here in the center of the board, but whenever you place more pieces on light squares, more pawns on light squares, it makes, of course, your light square bishop much worse. So although you have now a solid structure, but now look at this bishop on c8 is simply out of game. We have now queenside castling, b6, bishop to d3, and what black could do is a common method, I think, maybe with the move bishop to a6 to finally get rid of your light square bishop against this powerful bishop of whites. This method is many times played, I think, in French defenses, also in some Queen's Indian defenses, where you're trying to finally get the piece out and trade it off, as I said, for a good piece of whites. But actually, it's not so easy even to proceed here. You could maybe trade it off, but you basically just inviting here white pieces into the game. After something like knight from b to d7, we'll play rook to a3, a very aggressive move. And you see now even queenside castling is not working, kingside castling is not working because this knight is stuck here. You cannot play knight to g6 because you get knight takes g6, h6, g6, and then the rook is lost. So again, black would simply stay too long with the king in the center. Also, then maybe we can try here from white's perspective to open the position somewhere. So although you got rid maybe of one positional problem, now you get another one. So even here in this position, bishop to a6 is not such a great continuation that maybe many of us would be thinking. So after bishop to d3, bishop to b7, that's why by Caissa we have knight to h5, knight to g6, and now knight to e2. If you try now again, let's see now this move c5, then we get knight to f4. You can maybe try to defend here the g7 pawn, but now we pick up this one and also this one. If you play here knight to f4, knight to f4, maybe you're trying knight to c6, but also you have to worry about some stuff like knight to g6, fork against the rook and the queen. You can maybe take, but then we take out this one. So again, I'm pointing out this common move that we love to play in the French defense. Then afterwards the move c5 is again simply not working in this variation of the Alekhine-Chatard attack. After move knight to e2, knight to d7, we have now queen to h3, knight to f8, and now g4, putting more pressure on this diagonal. Now Stockfish is trying, of course, to include further the light square bishop into the game. F takes g4, we have queen takes g4. Also, what's a very tough thing now for black to handle is a potential method with f4, f5 here to break the position around the square e6. This is now also a weak square in black's camp. So that's why from move g6 prevented this stuff. We have now the move knight to f4 here by Stockfish, and now queenside castling. And I think black solved now many positional problems in the game, finally castled. All of this is somehow weakened structure in front of the king. This is not, of course, the optimal pawn structure that you want to get in front of the king. So you see white's pawn structure is much healthier. And also the issue, I think the main issue for black is the lack of the rook connection. The knight is always stuck to the defense also of the e6 pawn. So not an easy position to play for black for sure. So we have now the move c3, fixing now the structure, anticipating, of course, the possibility of c5, and then, for instance, if c4 happens, then you have still opportunities to retreat with your bishop and keep it, of course, active on this side of the board. We have knight to b8, Caissa is preparing now finally c5, followed with knight to c6. Stockfish does the same, anticipates the move c5 and plays now the move knight to f3. Nice maneuver here by the knight all over the board. Knight to c6. So see, we have reached, I think now, I would say, a common similar position like in the usual French, where black finally played c5 followed with knight to c6, and there is at least now pressure here against this weak pawn on d4. We have now queen to g5. Interesting move here by the fish, trying to force a trade of queens. If you play now queen takes g5, knight takes g5 is going to happen, and now we have problems there. If you try rook to e8, then knight to f7, look at this, then knight to d6 is, so for instance, winning. So again, the problem also for black is you don't have any more the dark square bishop. You trade it off in the beginning, and now you suffer also some dark square problems all over the board. f6, g7, h6 are weak, d6 especially is also weak. So getting rid of your key defender, and of course it's not so good to have maybe the queen as a good defender of dark squares, but now you cannot trade it off. You have to control somehow this squares with your queen all over the board. So after queen to g5, that's why queen to e8, bishop to b5, pinning now the knight to the queen. Here we have a rook to d7, we have d takes c5, releasing now the pressure in the center, b takes c5, and now rook to h3. the signature move of the fish, an amazing rook lift. I'm not sure how many videos have I already recorded where Stockfish plays a rook lift, and when the rook lift is coming, you know that this rook will do something special for sure in this game. So after rook to h3, Kai'Sa continues now, I think, in a good way. Rook to f7 with ideas to play rook to f5, hitting also this pawn. Stockfish continues now with c4. First of all, we have rook to f5, we have queen to g3, and now d4. Good move by Kai'Sa, keeping everything glued together, everything compact, and also from an endgame's perspective, black has a good strategic element. It's of course the supported pass pawn. If the game now reaches the fully endgame stage, this is supported pass pawn will cause always many positional problems in white position. So white cannot reach now the endgame. White has to do something with a better piece activity. We have to say it. White has at least a better piece activity so far. We have now knight to d2. The fish is trying now to play knight to d3, knight to e4, and hit now the pawn on c5. That's now a new target that Stockfish spotted. So this is the way to go. Knight to d3, knight to e4, and then we're trying to attack this pawn on the board. So here we have for knight to d2, what could you do? Even if you try rook to e5, then the issue is you get this one, you have to step back with the rook, and now knight to e4 will happen, and again you have problems now around the square d6. The fork is coming for sure. The move knight to d6 is coming, and there's nothing that can be done against this move. So you will lose, I think, in an optimal scenario for black, at least the knight for the rook here. Black is losing the exchange for sure. So far you cannot pick up now this pawn on e5. So that's why for knight to d2, here Kai'Sa played queen to e7, keeps now the queen more connected to the c5 pawn. Knight to d3, the fish is continuing the pressure. Knight to a5. Again, Kai'Sa anticipates the possibility of knight to e4. If that happens, I think immediately bishop to e4 would happen. Here we have queen to g4 by the fish, trying of course knight to e4, and then queen to e4, and maybe exploit some light square problems then that could be caused afterwards. We have now h5, we have queen to e2. Again, Stockfish is protecting the e4 square, tries of course knight to e4 and maybe knight to d6 or knight to f6, or if bishop to e4 happens, then after queen to e4, as I said, again target maybe the weak ax square. And now comes the critical moment of the game. So many moves have been played. Kai'Sa played, I think, a beautiful game, beautiful defensive game so far, and now Kai'Sa made, I think, the first important inaccuracy in the game. Here Kai'Sa played now bad king to b8, and this move is actually bad because in some lines you're running into some fork ideas, of course not immediately, but with many deflections, with many tactics. Of course, maybe black could be vulnerable around the square c6. A better choice for black was to play the move a6 immediately, kick away finally this bishop from this active square. Then in the potential line, white would be forced to retreat, and then you try king to b8 afterwards. Then after knight to e4, you could maybe get rid of here the bishop for a knight, and then after a queen to e4, you can maybe try g5, expanding here on this side of the board, and still a complicated game to play. I don't want to dive too much into now, I don't know, a deeper Stockfish analysis. Of course, white has some attacking ideas here on this side of the board. We can maybe try b4, then you try something like this, protect. This just the one Stockfish line that I analyzed at home. Look at this. As I said, many sidelines, many variations can be played after something like queen takes b3, a takes b3, or bishop to b3. Still a complicated game to play. But I wanted to point out that now the move a6 was really the only defensive move here for Kai'Sa. But what Kai'Sa played now, first of all, the move king to b8. Stockfish plays now knight to e4, and now you see bishop to e4 is not so good. The move that black hoped for is not so good because, as I said, you are a little bit vulnerable here around the square c6. Now for queen to a4, you're trying a6, and now you see you have lost a pawn. It's not working. Or you maybe try knight to d7. Then we can play also this one, bishop to d7, queen to d7, and now knight to c5 is collapsing. So the bishop would simply be too powerful all over the board, and that's why king to b8 not immediately such a good continuation. Stockfish continues now with knight to e4, and as I said, bishop to d4 wouldn't be such a good move. Now here Kai'Sa tried now a6, but it's a different story now in the previous line the bishop was on a4. Now the bishop is still on b5, and now Stockfish plays the impossible move in this particular position. Stockfish plays now the stunning bishop takes a6. Really wild stuff. So Stockfish sacrificed a bishop here for a pawn. What's the issue here? Why would anyone do this? I'm not sure how many of us even would consider this move, because okay, after bishop to a6 you have knight to c5, but I thought okay, maybe black can retreat here to c8, but actually the issues here, or maybe you can try bishop to c4 here, pick up the pawn, then actually you get this one, queen to e1, attacking now the knight. You're maybe trying knight to c6, and now look at this, rook takes d4 could be working, knight takes d4, then queen to b4. Wherever you go, you're trying to cover yourself. Look at this, knight to a6, and now you lose the queen on e7. So there are so many dirty things that Stockfish prepared here. Even if after queen to b4, instead of this move bishop to b5, if you try king to c8 here to escape, in order to keep your king connected to the queen, because we saw knight to a6 is a huge threat and the queen is lost. Now knight to d6 is again working. Look at this, we get this queen into the game, and again you get checkmated. So see, so crazy position that even bishop to c4 is not working here because of this move queen to e1 followed with rook takes d4. Crazy position here by Stockfish 16. So that's why after knight to c5 here, Kai'Sa retreated to c8, but now Stockfish continues with an f4. If you play here queen to f, or rook to f4, then queen to d2 again attacks the rook, again also attacks the knight. So it will be again game over here for black. So after move f4, we have knight to d7 by Kai'Sa, and now knight to b3. What should you do? Well, if black takes now this knight on b3, then finally this rook is coming. Look how crazy this rook in the beginning was. Now finally it gets into the game, and now after bishop to d7, rook takes d4. This is maybe a potential line. Look at this, rook to d7, you're getting destroyed by the heavy artillery. So that's why after knight to b3, we have now the move d3. Even knight to b7 is not good here because of knight to d4, and then there is this problem of the fork on c6. So, and nothing is working. After knight to b3 here, Kai'Sa tried d3, queen takes d3 by the fish, knight to b7. Here Kai'Sa has a good control of the f4 square, but now Stockfish changes the direction of the attack and plays now again knight to d4 with an attack against the rook, but also with the threat of knight to c6, the fork against here the queen and the king. So that's why queen to f8, Stockfish takes, we have g takes f5, knight to d6, knight takes d6, and now e takes d6. And you see, because of this cool tactics that Stockfish created, Stockfish gave up, of course, the rook for two minor pieces for the rook, pardon me, but Stockfish created here 4 connected passers on the queen side, which is not the compensation. It's of course completely winning here. Now the pawns are marching, b4 c5 is going to happen, so not a pleasant position for black to play for sure. So bishop to b7, queen to d4, attacking now the queen. Stockfish simplifies the game, why not? We have now b4, we have king to c8, c5, king to d7, and now Stockfish occupies, of course, the only open file. We have now a good move. The g file is open, we have king to c6, and now Stockfish puts more pressure against this bishop. The threat is of course to play something like b5 and deflect now here the king from the defense of the bishop. Maybe you can try bishop to a6, but look at this, then rook to c7 is going to happen. You try this one, then we push the pawn further, and this one will be promoted for sure. So it's not working. Even if you try here rook to c8, then as I said, b5 deflects now the king from the defense of the bishop, or you may be trying rook to b8, then rook to c7 again, simply pushing the pawn further. Again, a messy position here for black. After rook to g7, that's why knight to d5, trying to control now the c7 square, but now Stockfish plays rook takes d5, a great move. Again, if you play with the king, then of course this one is lost. If you take with the pawn, then again a new check will happen, again you lose the bishop. So here in this position, Kai'Sa decided to play king to d5, Stockfish grabs now this bishop, and obviously this now completely winning endgame here for white. Of course Kai'Sa is trying to push the pawn, tries also to do this one, creates now actually 2 dangerous passers, but Stockfish has everything under control. After move h2, rook to h1, rook to h7, and king to b2. In this position, Kai'Sa resigns. So what's the issue? You can maybe try f4, then we get the king closer. You're trying this one, and the most important thing is that this king is controlling this pawn, and of course this 4 pawns on this side of the board. The rook cannot stop. Everything is defendable for white here, but when the pawns of white are marching here on the queen side, it's obviously not something that black can prevent here. So great game by the fish for sure. Great Alekhine-Chatard attack against the French defense. Really cool methods, exploiting this dark squares, keeping this bad bishop strategy where black's light square bishop couldn't participate in the game in the proper way. Then the knight started to dance all over the board, rook lift, opening the position, exploiting also the light square problems then afterwards in the position, weak king stuff. Great strategic elements, but also great tactics again by Stockfish 16. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting stuff against the French defense. If you want to see more beautiful, sharp attacking chess like this, check out our commented chess games played by computer series. Here's the link of our playlist, and if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.